Let's go. We got another primetime game in Philly, and this might be the biggest one for the Eagles this season. Of course, the Lions aren't hiding how much this game means to them either, but the Birds all of a sudden have a massive opportunity. In this video, I'll go over that, the latest injury report, and share the best picks and plays for the games this weekend. Plus, Vic Fangio has something extra special cooked up for Jared Goff, so let's talk about that and everything else around the Birds. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? Week 11, and this one might be the most important game the Eagles play all regular season. Alright, fine, we said that a lot about the Birds having the most difficult schedule in the league, but they've taken care of business pretty well up to this point. And with Philly atop the NFC, Zach Berman put it this way, it's not hyperbole to suggest that this is the Eagles' biggest game remaining, especially because nobody in the NFC East is likely to challenge them for the division crown. Plus, in case you weren't aware on the math, the Eagles' chances of the number one seed in the NFC could increase to 52% from 35% with a win over Detroit.
Feel that, Alan? Huh? That tingling in your balls, big metal butterflies fluttering around your stomach?
Yeah, the energy is definitely building on this one, so tell you what, do me a favor, drop a like on this video, and then go down to the comment section and let me know who the first touchdown scorer will be in the game on Sunday. Because with it being so hyped in this week's contest in primetime and feeling like a playoff atmosphere, if the Eagles win, I'm going to pick one person who accurately predicts the first touchdown score to win 2 tickets to any Eagles game of your choosing. So like I say, drop a like, leave a comment, and then come hang out during the game stream as we cheer on the Birds. Look, I know for the players and coaches, a lot of times it's just another game. However, if the Eagles can beat the Lions, then they'll hold tiebreakers over the LA Rams, Tampa Bay Bucks, Green Bay Packers, and Detroit Lions. AKA, that's basically a half-game advantage even if they ended up with the same record. Meanwhile, the Seattle Seahawks are right there with the same record, except they're only 4-2 in the NFC, so if Nick Sirianni can remain unblemished versus the NFC North, Philly's looking at a massive opportunity to control their destiny. Oh, by the way, the Seahawks are at the Rams this weekend, so the best-case scenario for the Eagles would probably be a Birds win, and then also the Rams to take care of business against the Seahawks.
Aren't you getting ahead of yourself?
Okay, fine. I get it for the comments of Josh, get real. Dude, we just scored only 10 points against the Packers, and if we do that against Detroit, we're not going to win. And yeah, okay, that's true. I've got a little bit of an argument in a second. However, I will give it to you that it does amplify it, hearing how much this game is Detroit's Super Bowl.
We've had this one on our calendar. We've been looking at this one on our calendar for a long time. So coaches are going to have us ready. We're going to be ready for this game, and we really see this as a must-win. I mean, ultimately, where we see ourselves as a team, we every year the standard is to battle for that number one seed, and they're one of those teams that we're going to battle with. So that's why it's a must-win in my eyes, and it's going to set us up really good for the last stretch of this season. It's going to be fun, and it's going to be a great test, and I'm going to go out there and compete my ass off, and that's what really we got to do as a D-line. If we're gonna win this game, it starts up front, and we understand that the talent of their O-line, but that doesn't change our standard.
They're well known for being the meanest fans, and I'll have to have some thick skin when I'm in there, so none of their insults can really get to me. That'll be part of my mindset. But no, it'll be fun. They'll be loud. It'll be rocking. I know they're passionate, and I can't wait. Yeah, man, we're excited. It's one, obviously against Super Bowl champ last year. It's one kind of everyone has circled on their calendar. When the year comes out, you get a shot at the team we won it last year in their place, Sunday Night Football, the whole thing. It'll be great, and our guys will be ready to go.
You go back and look at the schedule, a lot of the teams that the Eagles have played so far this season have been really familiar. Although when it comes to the Lions, these teams haven't played each other since the start of the 2022 season. I mean, I guess that could be viewed as a positive or negative, with multiple analysts believing if the Eagles don't show up with their A game, then they're going to get embarrassed against Detroit. And actually went as far to compare it to the 2023 49ers game when Philly got blown out 42-19.
You're overreacting.
Sorry, I'm not buying that narrative because the Birds have a couple very clear advantages. Not to mention that more than a few beat writers said it was very clear all week that the Eagles have loads of respect for the Lions on their talent, toughness, and the way they play. So they're not overlooking them, and heck, just based off the numbers, the Detroit Lions are armed with perhaps the most accurate quarterback in the NFL with Jared Goff, one of the most dynamic backfield duos of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and 3 really high-quality threats in Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and Sam Laporta. Granted, it's looking like their tight end may not play this weekend, but I'll share more on that here in a second. Here's what I appreciate. Detroit averages 31.4 points per game, has a 6-3 record, and even as they were a top 5 offense, head coach Dan Campbell decided to take over the play calling after failing to top 24 points in 3 straight weeks. Of course, that may seem a little impulsive to some, but the results of that switch speaks for itself, as the Lions looked pretty much unstoppable against the Commanders last week to the tune of 44 points and 550 yards of total offense.
Well, I mean, they had 550 yards, I think, and about half of it was running and half of it was passing. So they were really good. And they got a lot of talent on that side of the ball. They got the best O-line in the league. Quarterback, according to Dan's, playing the best that he's ever played. The 2 good running backs. The receivers are all fast. You know, it's a good unit to be calling plays for.
Vic Fangio versus Dan Campbell. That will be the matchup to watch. Although the biggest advantage has to be that Fangio absolutely has Jared Goff's number. For the record, Goff is 1-4 against the Eagles in his career, so he hasn't played them necessarily well either. But specifically against Fangio, the 31-year-old is 0-2 while playing a couple of the worst games he's ever played in his life. Refresher for you, back in 2018 with Goff on the Rams, Fangio's Bears defense held the, at that time, number 2 scoring offense in the league to just 6 points. As Sean McVay's quarterback completed an abysmal 45% of his passes to go along with 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Chicago also sacked Goff 3 times, all to add up to Jared posting a passer rating of 11 in that game.
That's embarrassing.
It's not like it was a fluke, though, because it happened a couple years later when Fangio met Goff again. And that would be in 2021, this time with Fangio in Denver and Goff in Detroit. But the Broncos routed the Lions 38-10 behind only 61% completions and another 2 interceptions on the day from Goff. So again, the long and the short of it is that Vic Fangio has Jared Goff's number.
Coach Fangio, I mean, he's a legend, man. It stood the test of time, that style of defense, the way they play. The coverage, the rush goes hand in hand, and it's a pain in the ass. It's hard. It's hard to deal with offensively.
By the way, definitely a fan of Dan Campbell, but the other pain that they're going to have to deal with is the newfound pass rush that the Eagles have thanks to the new additions in the D-line. Because get this, Goff is only completing 50% of his passes this season with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions when he's pressured. Don't really have to say anything to that. That's pretty bad. However, when he's kept clean, he's completing a ridiculous 83% of his passes for 16 touchdowns and only 1 interception. I mean, honestly, I go back to it, but knowing the history that Fangio has against Goff, and also the fact that the Eagles have allowed the fewest passing touchdowns, 8 this season, the fewest in the entire league, makes me feel a little bit better about Sunday night. Now, obviously, they got to go out there and prove it, but defensively, there's tons of opportunities. Also, for an O-line that is typically good for Detroit, some injuries and changes have made the interior shaky. Thanks to Frank Ragnow retiring over the offseason, Christian Mahogany, their left guard, being placed on IR last week, and Tate Ratledge, their right guard, being a rookie. Just saying, shout out to Jimmy Kimsky for pointing this out, but Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores decided to attack the interior of the Lions' offensive line a couple weeks ago and ended up getting 5 sacks. So with some extra tape, the history, again, that I mentioned against Goff, and the added pass rush help of Jalen, Phillips, Nolan, Smith, and the others, Philly's going to be ready.
It's another great one. Like, what an opportunity. You pray for times like this. It's definitely, like, being able to play big games in big environments is a blessing. So I'm super excited for the opportunity.
That's exciting for me personally because I feel like, if people acclaim their offensive line as being the best, we want to play against the best and we want to do our best against the best. And so, we have a great competition coming in. We have a great mindset going into the game. We have to, at first and foremost, this game is going to be physical. We already know that. We already got our suitcases packed for that. But at the end of the day, we just have to go out there and play with great technique, not let the game be bigger than what it is, and then, just go out there and ball. Me personally, I played Jameer in college too, so I know the type of player that we get with him. I'm excited. They call them, I guess, lightning and thunder. And so, when you have 2 guys like that and they acclaim like that, then you understand that it's going to be a challenge up front, and they're going to go with the run-first mentality. And, I'm sure with the head coach that they have, they want to establish the run early. They want to establish the run. They want to be physical up front. And that's on us as a line to make sure that we mitigate those problems and then let the pass take over and let the coverage take over. But we all have to do our jobs. It takes all 11. It takes us up front, big man leads the way, so that's where we have to start.
Not gonna lie, that's a fantastic point when you're breaking down this Lions offense. After all, when opposing defenses have been able to slow down the Lions' rushing attack, they've had success. FYI, I'll save you the research here, but Detroit has been held below 100 rushing yards in 3 games this season. And guess where those 3 losses have come from? You got it, those same exact games. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, Jalen Hurts is 10-0 against the NFC North. And despite not playing well last week, this is a Lions defense that is tailor-made for an offensive breakout performance. Yeah, reason being, the Lions have used man coverage the fourth most out of any NFL team this year at over 33%. Which you probably already know this next part, but there's none better than Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown against man coverage. Like even in an up and down year for the offense, QB1 ranks third versus man coverage with 12 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 126.3 rating. And then for AJ, he's got 14 catches on 22 targets for 243 yards and 3 touchdowns. Heck, it's almost a perfect rating when targeting 11 in man coverage. So I'm sorry, I know I said I wasn't going to do it again. Try to stay clear of it. But I got to roll with AJ with a bounce-back effort on Underdog. And if you want to do the same, you can get $100 in bonus funds when you play $5 and get additional gimme picks. That is thanks to Underdog being one of the official season-long sponsors. And look, with them being one of the official season-long sponsors, you won't find a better deal than when you sign up, scan the QR code, use code Philly Special, or just click the link in the description. I'm telling you, with the NFL action heating up, there's all kinds of other boosts you can take advantage of for the primetime matchup. All right, we missed by one last week, but I'm telling you, we are due for a bounce back. So first, I'm doubling down on a Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown. Mentioned it earlier, but the Lions play a ton of man coverage, and whether it's Philly going empty or Detroit getting beat by a tush push, I'm taking QB1. Next, give me A.J. Brown higher than 4 receptions, man coverage, prime time. It's now or never for A.J. And then I actually took 2 Lions picks. One, Jahmyr Gibbs lower than 63 rushing yards because I believe that'll be a focus. And 2, Jared Goff to throw an interception. Come on, he's had 6 in 2 meetings versus Fangio, so I'll take the 1 all day. As always, let me know what you think about these plays. Get signed up with the best option in fantasy sports. Scan the QR code, use code Philly Special, get the gimme picks, the bonus funds, everything else. Click the link in the description. Remember, for all the negatives on the Eagles offense, they are still converting at the very top in terms of red zone scores. Better yet, the Lions defense allows touchdowns on 67% of red zone drives. So it's without question a strength against a weakness Sunday. However, the one area to make sure and account for is Aiden Hutchinson, since he's actually tied with Micah Parsons for the second most quarterback pressures and is tied for the most turnovers caused by pressure this season. He's also been responsible for 7 of Detroit's 30 sacks, with the most impressive stat being that 4 of those have resulted in forced fumbles. Still, take care of business there, and there's a ton of areas that KP's offense can capitalize on. I know we've said that week after week. This one, though, the man coverage, I am optimistic. Just got to take care of business. And it no doubt starts with the O-line play. So given the latest updates around the Eagles injury report, I had the Ant-Man hop on to share how that might impact Sunday night, as well as discuss all the other matchups to keep your eye on.
So I've been covering the injury report for every opponent of the Eagles all season long, and the Lions have quite the injury report. I mean, it's legitimately like a scroll, and it didn't get any shorter as the week progressed. So they officially ruled 4 players out in Terrion Arnold, Kerby Joseph, Sam Laporta, and Josh Pascal. But there are also 10 players that are still questionable, including Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. They're kind of bookends at offensive tackle, and neither one of those players practiced on Friday, so could have just been maybe like a late in the week, a rest day, or it could have been, hey, maybe like a little bit of a red flag. But my guess is that both of those guys will play, but there are 2 players in Marcus Davenport and DJ Reed who would normally be starters for the Lions, but they had their practice window activated. They're both on IR. But Dan Campbell said that he doesn't think that either one of them are going to be activated. So it does sure look like the Lions are going to be really shorthanded against the Eagles this week.
Lots of areas for opportunity for the Eagles because, even if some of those guys are playing, like you say, it's fascinating because so many times you go through and you're like, oh, hey, there's a couple guys that are injured. Obviously, the Eagles had 4 starting offensive linemen to begin the week with a limited participant designation. Now, Wednesday was a walkthrough, so it was an estimated practice there, but still was limited. Had they gone through a practice, that would be the thought. Everyone's full participant by Friday's practice. Very good news there. The only question mark is Willie Lampkin based on the injury report. How great is that? Kudos to you, by the way, because if people were checking out the live stream earlier in the week, you did predict that the Eagles would have all 5 starting offensive linemen. That's pretty big.
I mean, it's a huge sign, and I tweeted about it on Friday. I mentioned how the Eagles, I know everybody's talking about A.J. Brown and the passing game struggles and things like that. I mean, Saquon Barkley hasn't looked the same, but if you look at the offensive line, not only have they struggled when they have been on the field, but Eagles have only played 1 game all season long where all 5 of their projected starters heading into the season played every snap for the offense in a single game, and that was week 2 against the Chiefs. So I know we want to point the finger at certain players or certain coaches, but once the offensive line is fully healthy and they can string together a couple games where they all play together, that's when we really might see this offense finally take that next step forward. And obviously getting Cam Jurgens back is huge, and Lane Johnson being healthy, Landon Dickerson obviously looking more like himself in recent weeks. So that's a huge bonus for the Eagles. We'll see if they can actually finish the game together. I know they'll start it together, but can they finish it together? But also, as regarding Willie Lampkin, I know he's listed as questionable for the game. I think it's more so like questionable. Can they create a roster spot for him? It seems like AJ Dillon would probably be the obvious kind of cut candidate if they do want to have him added to the 53-man roster, or they might just be waiting it out and seeing if anybody else gets hurt or banged up that they could potentially place on IR to free up that open spot. So I think he's probably ready and good to go, but it's more so questionable regarding if they can find a spot for him on the 53-man roster.
Got some options. It's amazing what continuity does, though. Like you pointed that out as far as the offensive line. And so many times, myself certainly, but I think a lot of people, judging from the comments, social media, everywhere else, you take it for granted of just going like, oh, that's the best offensive line in football, in the Eagles for last year. And you just roll into the next season and go, well, that's just going to be the exact same case. It obviously has not been, and they've played below the standard. But it's a great point. The guy's injured combined with not having a full game to play together and have that chemistry, have that built-in communication, and something to go back on. So maybe so. Fingers crossed. Prayers for guys to stay healthy, get this run the remaining half of the season. But big things, and it feels like opportunity is the key word this week in so many different areas. We'll get to the implications. I shared it earlier here in the video as well, but to the implications for the standings in the NFC. Obviously, division still kind of plays a factor there, but feels like we're beyond that within just the NFC as a whole. But can't count anything before it happens. This week, the Lions come into town. It feels like their Super Bowl. Like you hear some of the sound bites, what the players are saying. Amon-Ra St. Brown, even on his podcast back in the offseason, is talking about like, oh yeah, if you would have seen if we had made the NFC Championship game, you would have seen something different. It's all hypothetical speculation, but it does feel like even if the Eagles are saying, hey, it's just another week, Detroit's players are not even hiding it. It is like, oh, we've had this one circled for quite a while.
Yeah, and I saw actually Aiden Hutchinson also said like we view this as a must-win, and he can't wait to play in Philadelphia, and that he thinks it's going to be like a college environment which he feeds off of, and he just thinks it's going to take the team to like another level. I'm like, all right, we'll see what happens. Everybody talks a big game about like heading into the Eagles, and it almost seems like the two teams that talk the least heading into the matchup are the ones that actually were able to beat the Eagles this season. So it almost seems like the less you talk, the less kind of bulletin board material you give the Eagles, the better off you are. So I'm really, really excited to see this game on Sunday night.
Let's go. Get the job done. Have another head-to-head tiebreaker. We'll get to there in a second. But the opportunities, as we do most weeks, offensive side of the ball for the Eagles, there's a couple areas that they can take advantage of.
Yeah, so I know A.J. Brown's been the hot topic in Philadelphia, obviously, after he went on the stream and said what he said, and I feel like we've talked about that so much that I don't even want to talk about it anymore. But on the field, this could be a big game for A.J. Brown, because if you look in the past, since he's been on the Eagles, when they play a team that utilizes a lot of man coverage, that's when A.J. Brown has a big day. When they play a team that uses a lot of zone coverage, that's when Devontae Smith has a big day. And guess what? The Lions play the most, or tied for the highest percentage of man coverage in the NFL at 41.19%. And it feels like this could be a big A.J. Brown day. I mean, not only are they banged up at corner, and who knows, maybe they'll switch it up and they'll utilize more zone because they know that's what the Eagles kind of struggle against. But if they do kind of stick to their guns and play man coverage, all three of the four cornerbacks that could be out there are 5'9". And I mean, with 180, 191, I mean, Avonte Maddox could be out there, former Eagle, obviously, that we're all familiar with. So if that's the case, I think it could be a big day for A.J. Brown. But also, the passing game could be going in the middle of the field too, because Jack Campbell, who's a very solid linebacker, he does have his warts in coverage. I mean, he's allowed 31 receptions on 39 targets this season. That's a near 80% completion percentage. He's also allowed 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, no pass breakups, a passer rating of 124.4. So we could see Dallas Goedert or whoever goes feasting in the slot, or even Saquon Barkley, if they can get him matched up on Jack Campbell, like down the field on a passing route. That could be a big time play too. So those are two areas of opportunity for Philadelphia's offense.
By the way, let me just point out too, because people watching this, if you're wondering on the coverage, man coverage, how often they're playing this, I mentioned it earlier in the video. If you're wondering the discrepancy between the numbers, I think the number that I took from was the last couple weeks. So the difference is Anthony obviously saying the 40%, 40+%.
Yeah, that's from Sumer Sports too.
So,
they have them
right, and so there's
Denver,
some differences, but I'm sure someone's going to go, wait a second, I thought it was 33, 34%. It is top 5 regardless, but mine was a more short-term first in the NFL or second in the NFL, somewhere in that area for man coverage. Regardless, they're going to have opportunities. Do yourself a favor, scan the QR code, use code Philly Special, because if you're going to pick a prop, I'll just say this really quickly. Anthony's been on this in the past, but when A.J. Brown has only come away from a different game of having, 2 catches, very limited action, the following game, he has 5 or more catches, or that's the stat. It's exactly 5 catches. Now, the line that's set on Underdog, if you're paying attention on this here, is 4.5. So do yourself a favor, take the higher on the 4.5, which is what I've already done. I shared this earlier in the video, but that's the reason why. That's more info on that. Anyway, to get back to the other areas of opportunity on the defensive side, what you got?
So the Eagles can kind of mimic what the Vikings did a couple weeks ago when they actually beat the Lions, where they attacked the interior of Detroit's offensive line, where they have Tate Ratledge, who's a rookie, Graham Glasgow, who used to be a guard, had to move into center this year, and then actually a former Eagle and a member of Stoutland University, Coyote Awasika, is going to be probably starting after they dealt with some injuries there. So they can definitely, we've seen them use those stunts in the middle of the field, and they have more Ojomo taking out one guy, Jalen Carter looping around, or even one of the edges looping inside. Obviously, Nakobe Dean and Zach Bowen and Jahad Campbell as blitzers too, or those simulated pressures where it looks like just the front four is going to come, but then one of them drops out and one of the linebackers comes. Like, you could really kind of mess with this interior offensive line that hasn't played together a ton. So that's one area of kind of an opportunity for the defense. And another one is, this kind of goes both ways, and it's pretty funny to talk about because we've always covered the Eagles going 3 and out and how they can't convert on third down and their struggles. And they're one of the worst teams in the NFL at converting just 34.86% of their third down attempts, 38 of 109 attempts overall. But guess who's also really bad converting on third down? The Detroit Lions. Despite all of that firepower that they have, they've converted only 37.5% of their third down opportunities, 42 out of 112. So these offenses are very, very close in being how bad they are on third down. So that's kind of another thing where if the Eagles can get off the field on defense, that will suddenly give the offense more opportunities for them to hopefully not go 3 and out.
And we talked about this earlier in the video as well, but Jared Goff, Vic Fangio, having his number, I'm pretty confident in that one. You certainly are once we get to the score predictions for a reason of that. But it just speaks for itself. Like, if you've only played against Vic Fangio in 2 games, you've lost both of those. Your offense is averaging 8 points per game. Now, you can make the case or argument and go, yeah, but did he have a good offense? One of those games, and I mentioned this earlier in the video, was the number 2 offense in the NFL, which, by the way, is the same spot that they're in right now with the Detroit Lions. If you're going based off of points per game, held them to 6 points. The Bears won the game 15-6. I mean, it's the most, you talk about ugly 10-7, like 15-6. But Jared Goff, 4 interceptions, no touchdown, 45% completion percentage. I mean, I hope that we see some sort of numbers like that on Sunday night, but it doesn't have to be even to the extreme, just somewhere around that area. Fangio, he's got his number. You pressure Goff, good things happen. I'm really hopeful that we get this win. I do think that we will. But before we get to some of the predictions and scores, really quickly, we touched on this last week going into the Packers game. Obviously, implications for that one. They got the job done, ugly at times, in their own house, hosting the Detroit Lions. Primetime matchup, another potential top NFC team to get a tiebreaker on. The stakes are even higher, kind of as we were talking about.
Yeah, it's huge. And if you look at the current NFC standings, of the 7 teams that would make the playoffs, the Eagles already have the head-to-head tiebreaker over 3 of those other 6 teams. And the Lions are one of the other 3 that they haven't had a win against. Obviously, they haven't played them yet. They'll also play the Bears, and then there's the Seahawks, who they won't play this. So there's a chance that the Eagles, if they win this game and they win the game over the Bears, they'll have the playoff tiebreaker in over 5 of the potential 6 other playoff teams in the NFC. So this is a huge matchup crazy in that regard, and the Eagles could really have a huge advantage going into playoff seeding.
Could you imagine if we were like sitting here going into the playoffs and it's like, okay, so who are the Eagles going to get? They're going to get a first round bye, because they have the number 1 seed, and well, they beat every team except for the Seahawks. Oh my gosh, okay, like I mean, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, right? Because they have areas they need to improve. I know the offense, everybody says it. We're all totally on board. It needs to be better. It needs to be more consistent. Take advantage of everything there, but it's so far so good. They've had the toughest strength of schedule. By the way, the strength of victory is second in the league, and it's only behind the Giants, who don't have very many victories, but they beat us one game, so it really helps the strength of victory. And they've ended up, winning these games against the Chargers also. So their strength of victory is like 700, But besides them, the Eagles, you don't normally see that. Sometimes it's, like a bottom feeder teams, they got lucky and won a game or two against a team they shouldn't have. The Eagles have the second best strength of victory, and they have that crazy hard schedule. So even as bad as it is at times, perspective-wise, they're still at the top of the NFC for a reason. Anyway, prediction-wise, we're getting there. First touchdown score. We didn't hit on that one last week. Feels like we're due to come back and get this one. Who are you taking?
This might be kind of the low-hanging fruit for the Eagles because he scored so many damn touchdowns this season, but I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert. I mean, he scored 7 touchdowns in the 8 games that he's played, but also because of that number that I mentioned earlier where Jack Campbell has struggled in coverage. He's allowed 4 touchdowns. Like I said, no interceptions, no pass breakups. So if the Eagles do get into the red zone, they've obviously shown that they love utilizing Dallas Goedert there. I could see them kind of marching down the field, their opening possession, like they did last week, hopefully not fumbling it away this time around, and then eventually hitting Dallas Goedert for a touchdown to open the game.
I like it. Dallas, why? I mean, why not? He's got, like you said, the 7 touchdowns. I'm going to do what I did earlier this season. It worked out whenever I did this. But I'm going to double down. I said it was going to be Jalen Hurts last week. It didn't happen. I really think that he actually would have if he didn't fumble on that empty and run for it. I don't think he was going to get on that play against the Packers, but it felt like it was one of those drives like, we're going to get stopped at the 1-yard line. The tush push is going to happen, and the floodgates are going to open. They did not take place. But Jalen Hurts, we're due. First touchdown score, that's what I'm going with. Score predictions, though. We're going to get a close one here. I think the spread is 2.5. Eagles favored by 2.5 is the last time that I checked. What do you think?
Well, I told you before we started recording that I'm getting kind of eerily similar vibes to how I was feeling before the Super Bowl, where I was like, I don't know why, but I think the Eagles are going to blow the Chiefs out. Right?
I will take that.
So that's exactly how I'm feeling this time around. It feels like with the way the Lions are banged up, just the way the Eagles are trending, I think they were. I know they won last week, but I don't think anybody was happy with that 10-7 victory in the locker room. I think they also view this as kind of a statement opportunity for them. And I have the Eagles winning 28-13 over the Lions at Lincoln Financial Field on Sunday night. And for the reasons that you mentioned already, right? That the Lions have. Jared Goff has struggled against Vic Fangio. It seems like Fangio has his number. Jared Goff has struggled against the Eagles regardless in his career. He's 1-4 against the Eagles. His only win was during the COVID year in 2020 in an empty stadium. And you look at the Lions team as a whole this season, they've lost 3 times to the Packers, the Chiefs, and the Vikings. Guess what? The Eagles beat all 3 of those teams. So I think the Eagles are actually going to handle the Lions. It might sound crazy, but I think it's going to be a bigger margin than many anticipate.
Let's go. I really hope that you're correct in this prediction here. I'm not that confident as you, but I am confident. I said, and we talked about this a second ago before hopping on to record, but I said in one of the past videos 28-24, or I typed that out, shared it in the comments and whatnot. That was before doing a deep dive on more of the matchups and history, and then also the injury report, the final report that came out. All that being said, instead of 28-24, I'm going to go 28-20. I 8-point win. We'll absolutely take it. For sure cover, but for the same reasons. You get rolling. Let's get AJ a score and hopefully a little bit better on the offensive showing for Kevin Patullo. Nobody's getting fired. Nobody's going to get fired. We're going to get this done. So get the job taken care of. Get the dub. Let us know in the comments, though, your score predictions, first touchdown score. Remember, if you get it right, one person is going to get a chance to win 2 Eagles tickets because this game's so big and on primetime. And shout out to Underdog, one of the sponsors. If you get it right and the Eagles win, one person I will spin for at the end of the game stream. So come hang out and you get a chance to win 2 of those tickets. So make sure to like and subscribe. Follow the Ant-Man on Twitter if you're not already, or X, at DiBona NFL. Also on the PhillySpecialShow.com for more details, game preview breakdowns, everything else, and picks and predictions as well. So appreciate it all as always. We'll see you guys. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Like I should